in the coming or the future of music? Do you feel the emphasis being shifted off the traditional producer and sort of more credence being given to the self-contained artist because he has those tools that are too close to him?
Yeah, I think that's true, but in the end, the talent of being a producer is not merely making sound. It's there's a talent, just like a given musician has talent, or a writer. It's how you interpret what's done and what you could give to that person. I mean, I started off when I first started making records. I'd make the tracks, tell a singer to come in, they'd sing it, and the next time they heard it was when the record came out. You know, I've come a long way from that. Now what I basically do is I try to bring the most out of the individual artist, out of the band or the individual. So if you go into your home development and you do a great job, and I as a producer would hear it, I would tell you it was great. And that's what I would do. But there still are things that someone can bring to it, that another person can bring to it. As an independent getting hired to do jobs like that, there might be less and less, but I think record companies, at least major record companies, still want somebody with the knowledge or the instinct to turn a hit, to be involved in it. It just increases their odds. Unless the record that you might do at home is just so perfect that it does it. So I don't really. To me, it's an advantage. The more good music that's made, the better it is for me. So that's what I feel about it.
I think it also depends on where you're coming from. If you're a rock band and you've been out touring, you may have virtually no studio experience at all. And those type of bands really need almost a traditional kind of producer, someone who's going to come in and take command of the whole studio situation. Because basically the record company's giving this band somewhere between probably $100,000 and $300,000 to go away and make a record, and they're not really that comfortable with just giving a band that much money and saying come back with a record. As Richard said, they want someone who's had experience in budgeting and just negotiating with studios and also turning out a hit. But I think the point you're making is probably about someone who sits in their bedroom and generates something, maybe using samples or a more put together type of production, right? And I think definitely that has pushed out the traditional production role to some degree.
It expands the pre-production availability a lot, which I think is really important. Is being able to suss out the arrangement and the feels of the song before you can commit a final performance. Even though Richard may think that it's an early recording as opposed to a demo, which I agree with in a lot of ways. You still need to not worry about the clock ticking, and you're paying X amount of dollars, and you're rushing yourselves to create something. The advent of having able to buy a small, ADAT and a Mackie board and sit at home and write and work on your songs on and on and on is valuable to the songwriter artist, I think.
Well, I guess the thrust of my point was, I think Richard spoke somewhat to it, is that I see an increasingly myopic approach from record companies now, and that digital technology is causing people to want to see a finished product more up front and less from a developmental. They're not looking so much to tease anymore as something they can let work a little more effortlessly.
If you're talking about record companies, I am myself cynical about it, but they want to see a finished product because they don't know the difference. And basically, if they did know the difference, they're unwilling, unless the artist is so spectacular, they're unwilling to make a commitment at an early stage because they can get finished product. And if they don't get it from you, they'll get it from somebody else.
A&R used to mean artist development. No one cares about development anymore. They just want the product.
And traditionally, the producer played a very important role in that.
The producer still does, yeah. I think that's still. I think if you had something that you thought was special and you could get it to one of us, someone like me, or somebody who cares, and just get feedback. even if you thought it was perfect, you'd have nothing to lose by asking me what I thought, and you could get something out of that, whether it was me or Puffy Combs, I don't know about that, but I imagine so, these are people with talents who have opinions, and they could be a big help to you, so I think that's how it would work. Anyone else? Yes.
I produced my own band for a couple of recordings, and I was wondering, what are the first steps that you all do? Say you get a new band, let's say a rock band, and what are the first things you do? Do you listen to their songs? Do you rip the songs apart and say, okay, play this chord here, or do this like that, or do you try and bring them in and listen to them live, or pick up the equipment, or whatever? I'm trying to figure out how I can do what I do better.
I think the first thing is picking the material. Before you start ripping it apart, you got to find a good song. So if you've got 30 songs, you really want to narrow it down to maybe 15 or 20 of the best, and then you start ripping the songs apart. Looking at how could we improve these. How is this going to be? Is it 5 seconds before you get to the vocal? Because if it is, you're not going to get there. As far as radio is concerned, you got to realize, these radio programs are just, they have mountains of CDs, and if they're like 20 seconds into the song and there's no vocal, chances are they're going to pull it off, So I think to me, the material is king in any production. If you don't have the good material, you might as well not waste your energy.
I think it's important to see a band live as many times as you can.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Because a lot of times bands do random things live. The vocalist projects differently on a particular line, or the guitarist plays a solo differently, or whatever happens, whatever little arrangement differences that take place. As a producer, if you're seeing the band on a regular basis and you remember, that was a key thing when we were trying to remember that when we're in the studio, when he sang that line, he sang it with a tonal change in his voice, or he went to a different note, and you want to bring that into the studio, because that was a good point. If you're not paying attention to how the band expresses themselves every time they play the song, you're not going to know their vocabulary. You're not going to know what colors you have to paint with when you're in the studio. And you may dream it up yourself and say, hey, listen, I want you to try singing this. But what you really want to do is you want to just bring out the natural colors of the band in the studio. So the more that you know what they're capable of doing, the more you can help make them focus.
I think my answer to your question, the way I would do it is, given that you're a live band, I'm assuming it's not to you. I would bring you. I would go to see a show, but that doesn't interest me as much. I would ask you to come into a rehearsal studio and just play for me, and I would diagnose it. I would digest it, put it into my internal computer, and then give you some advice. I'd probably pick out what worked and didn't work for me pretty early on, and that's what I would use for direction. I think that's the most important thing, is getting in a room with somebody that can give you some feedback and getting that feedback. I would do that with any one of my bands, anybody I work with. Usually it's no more than 2 or 3 hours. That's it. But I think that's important, is to play in front of somebody and get some personal feedback. Yes.
I've noticed differences, some of them dramatic, some of them kind of subtle, from your 2-track mix to the mastered CD. And I wonder what the producer's role in that is in getting, what I guess is usually it's the company that pops your CDs off. What role you take in saying, hey, this is what I want done after my 2-track master to whatever the digital master of the CD is, and what the fellow's doing that? Or nothing at all.
I used to do nothing for a while. When I started hearing how badly some of my stuff was being mastered, a lot of my work is actually custom vinyl. So even just mixing it to 2-track, I take different hits than if I was doing, let's say, a rock band or something like that, because most likely it's not going to go to vinyl. But I've had to go to Sony Studios. I had to call the record company and say, listen, they asked me to approve a mastering. I said, this thing, Vladimir something or other, it's something
He's
just
supposed to
totally
be a
ruined it.
right,
Right, well, he doesn't know how to do dance records, I'll tell you that.
I was told he has the best sound for bass ever, but it's true, these things.
It's funny, but yeah, someone can definitely ruin it. So it's important to proof it before it goes to the plant and be happy with it. If it's not, then you go back to the mastering engineer and you sit with him and you say, listen, we're trying to go for this.
What you need is you have to deal with people who are really good at it. There are some mastering people that are spectacular that master this. This guy Bob Ludwig in Maine. I mean, there are also you get people who do it through the computer now, and that works too. But I would say if you have a record that's really special and if you can afford it, you can call up one of these major mastering places, and you can make a deal with them. And now that it's all digital, it's a lot easier. If you were mastering to acetate, like they used to, you really had to watch the bottom, you had to watch the top. Now there are extremes that you can reach for without hurting the record, or hurting the CD. But when it was on vinyl, you had to be more careful. But what I would suggest to you is deal with somebody who's really good, or someone who has these computer programs you can play with. But I would go with somebody good. That's what I do, and I depend on that too.
One last thing,